Hello, everyone, and welcome to IBTM Meets, a series of interviews with leading figures and experts in our industry. My name is Laura Jensen, the IBTM Content and Community Executive, and I'm delighted to be joined here today with Dale Parmenter, the Group CEO at DRPG, who is joining us on Global Meetings Industry Day to talk about the future of the industry. So, hi, Dale. It's great to have you here today. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So if we kick off first just with talking a little bit about Global Meetings Industry Day itself, the theme this year is Meet Safe, which is obviously a theme that I'm sure we can all relate to in the moment in the industry. And we know that returning to live events will obviously require much higher levels of safety, but how do you think, from your perspective, that event organisers can approach that?
I think what we've got to remember is we're experts at delegate movement. You know, when you look at all the other industries, whether it's retail and other areas that have been allowed to open up, they're not experts in people management. That's our industry, and that's what we do. So if we can't get this right, nobody can. So I've never ceased to amaze me that actually we should have probably opened up earlier, because we could have managed this anyway. But going forward, we will open up. And I think the way we manage delegates, the delegate movements, it will be challenging depending on the venues. Some venues won't be geared up for that. How do we do catering? How do we, manage toilets? Those sorts of things. But of course, as the vaccine comes on and we start to get that herd immunity, things will get easier. But I'm absolutely confident that our industry can adapt. We're very innovative. We've looked at testing. We're still not sure. We are testing people now. Do the testing? Does the testing carry on? And the logistics behind that. And we did some timings around that. And you could get a significant number of people through testing. But actually, as I say, as the vaccines push forward, will that be needed after that? Maybe it is some extra security around health and safety, around cleaning, people management, keeping people apart, maybe the 1 meter distance, ways people move around halls or auditoriums or exhibitions. But I have absolutely no doubt that we will nail this.
Well, that's a wonderfully confident attitude, and I very much agree with you. I hope very much that we'll be able to get back to it soon enough. And just beyond safety, I suppose that's one thing that we're all very focused on at the moment with regards to returning. But that doesn't mean that other key themes have necessarily gone away. How do you think meetings organisers will need to consider things like travel, sustainability, the opportunities around hybrid events when they're planning successful meetings in the future?
I think sustainability was becoming a hot topic before COVID, and the whole hybrid discussion was already happening, and we'd already invested in quite a significant amount of technology, because we could see that how appropriate is it to fly thousands of delegates around the globe to one location, and I think in a few years' time it will become inappropriate to do that. I think what COVID's done is probably accelerated that, because now we can see that, hey, we can do this. We've got the technology, we've got the know-how, we've got the creative skills to make hybrid events work. So I think going forward there will be more of a hub approach, where we may have, instead of one big location with 5,000 delegates in a convention, we could have 5 locations. So there isn't so much of the long distance travel that we're used to. And even in the UK, when we can look at travel around the UK, could we have regional hubs there? So we have something in London, something in Birmingham, something in Manchester, all on the same day, all linked together. They have their own regional agendas, but then come together as one group, whether it's a sales team or an award ceremony. And I think actually that will become more efficient, particularly for organisations where they're not losing people for long periods of time out of that. I think the audiences will grow, the size of audiences, so better value for money for event organisers. So I think sustainability is going to be the hot topic, but not just around travel. I think it's going to be around waste, around power, sourcing locally, which I'm passionate about, that we should be sourcing locally wherever we can, particularly on the food supply chain. So there's a whole heap of work there that is being done and needs to be done around how do we make events more sustainable. So I think that's key. I think the other thing which is coming back onto the agenda is ROI, measuring the success. And I think since we've had virtual and people have said, oh, hey, I can do my conference now or my town hall virtually, why do I need to get people back together? And of course people want to get back together, but I think there's going to be some scrutinization of some certain live events that maybe aren't as efficient as they need to be, and maybe they've just happened because they've always happened. So we'll be looking at the efficiencies of those live events, again going back to that value for money, and are we measuring the success effectively of those live events? Are we seeing significant behavioural change in the delegates or the guests, whether that's internal or external communications? So I think that will certainly be coming back on to the fore.
Brilliant. Yes, I completely agree. And how do you think, I suppose, just from my perspective, looking at it as someone less experienced in the industry, how do you think the role of meetings themselves might then change if we're looking to have those hub approaches or more of those virtual events? Do you think people will meet in person for certain things and meet online for others, or do you think some companies will, go all hybrid? What do you think might happen to meetings themselves?
I think there'll be a combination. There'll be a real mix, which actually will make it quite interesting and quite exciting, maybe for the delegates. So, yeah, some of that smaller stuff, the 1 hour, 2 hour catch-up meetings can quite easily now be done virtually, and the technology there to bring that together. Whereas, the bigger conventions, the road shows, the product launches, the consumer events, I believe, will be face-to-face. But I think as an events industry, we need to now maybe think about stepping up our game and say, well, not necessarily seeing virtual and hybrid as competition, but actually how can we embrace all the technology now and all the techniques, everything we've learned over the last 12 months, in fact, the last 20 odd years, in effect, and make it more exciting for the delegate and more effective for the delegate. So I think as event organisers, we need to embrace the new technology. We need to look what's the appropriateness for that event and that message that we're trying to put over to the audience, and think of that user experience now. And is a live event the right user experience?
Absolutely. And we know in the industry that everyone is very keen to get back to live events in some capacity, no matter what that is. What do you think is the driving force behind that when we have now found that we can conduct things online? Why do you think people are still so keen to get back to live events?
I think it's very much that shared experience, that I was there moment. I was there when the product was launched. I was there when that band played, or I saw that person live. I think you cannot beat that. Everybody in the room, and I think we've all got a bit tired of doing the Zoom calls and the Teams calls. I think, oh no, not another Zoom call. So I think it is definitely that shared experience. And we do some research here with our insight and research team, and it's called Event Desire. Okay. And we did this before COVID, and generally we measure between 0 and 5. Those are the steps, and at any one time the average tends to be around about 1.8. So we were measuring starting in 2018. So and you look throughout the year, it doesn't change too much. We carried on measuring through 2020. So in January and February it was around 1.8, 1.3, 1.8. And then March, it started to rise to 2, and then got to July. By June, July, it was up at 3.4, 3.5. So we got to August, September last year, it was up to 4.9, and now we're at 5. We're at the maximum. So people absolutely want to get back to face-to-face, because however great the virtual event is, we're not getting that shared experience. We're sat alongside somebody in an auditorium, or we're in that networking event having a drink, and it's all that spontaneous stuff that happens that is much more difficult virtually. Walking around an exhibition, touching, feeling the products, talking to the people who've developed the product. Again, that spontaneity, that chat. If you're a CEO, you want to walk through that drinks reception at your awards ceremony and chat to people, you just can't effectively do that virtually. So I think that's why there is an absolute drive and a desire, and I think a pent-up demand at the moment to go back to live events.
Yes, definitely. And I think we've seen that here too, both in our own teams and externally as well. And I suppose if we just think about it now personally, what are you most looking forward to about getting back to live events? What's the bit that you're most looking forward to doing? I know in a webinar we had last week, some of the members of our PR team was just like, I just want to hug everybody. I want to set aside 20 minutes to just hug everybody. What's your top of your bucket list?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I've got a real passion for the arts, and I love going to the theatre. So seeing a live performance and being in the audience, to seeing, I don't really care what it is at the moment. Just seeing something live, and then having that chat, having that glass of wine with a group of people, and comparing what you've just seen and that excitement, or even in the pre-drinks, those sorts of things. It's just being there and having, let's say, that spontaneity of a discussion. Yes. So absolutely, and just going to a pub, I think, is just.
Yes, no, I completely agree. I think mine is along the similar lines, both meeting together with friends that I haven't seen in maybe a year's time, and having those events, because I don't know about you, but definitely Zoom calls recently between people have been like, so what have you done? And it's just like, not much. It will be nice to have things to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I was talking to my wife about it. We were talking the other day after our God knows how many meals at home we've had to try, even though you try and make it special. And she said, "Oh, I just want to go to a restaurant and not have to wash up afterwards."
Oh, yes.
So yeah, it's having people there, waiting on you or whatever, or just having that experience, that live event experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the core thing, like you said, the spontaneity, that experience that people can have, and going back to just meetings and events at the moment, but how do you think leaders and high profile people in the industry can help support that as the industry recovers? How can we, because obviously people want to get back together and do business and sit in meetings and talk to the clients and the customers that they haven't been able to for a while, but how do we make sure that that's still an experience?
I think we've got a part to play as leaders across the industry. One, to get the confidence back with the clients, the event organisers in those clients to say, hey, it's okay. We've got under control. Your delegates will be safe. So don't worry. I think, I say delegates, I think, are absolutely wanting to get back. But I think as leaders, we certainly need to convince the clients that it's okay. You don't have to wait to 2022. We can start to push this forward. And yes, it probably is going to be more September onwards that we're going to see the big flurry of activity. But I think it's also us as leaders promoting the advantages of live events and what you get from live events that you can't get from any other form of communication. And I know that the campaign that Simon Hughes and Rick Stainton has been doing has been brilliant, and that's really brought that to life. So I think as an industry now, we've really got to push out. This is our time to really start to push out, because I think up till now, people are like, yeah, that's great, but the restrictions doesn't allow us. Those restrictions are now starting to go. Therefore, now is the time to really push out and say, hey, it's best get your events booked in and get them in the diary. Because I think because of that pent-up desire, we're going to have shortages. And that worries me, that we can have shortages of supply in the supply chain for events, because agencies have disappeared, suppliers have disappeared, freelancers have left the sector altogether. We're going to have a massive supply and demand problem if we're not careful. I think the back end of this year and early into 2022, and as leaders, we need to try and solve that.
Absolutely. And do you think there are any new skills that people might need to develop throughout this recovery, if anything around managing your team as they encourage people coming back to live events, anything around what you yourself will be doing? Do you think there are any new skills that people will have to change or have changed already?
Well, what they have changed, the big one for us, what they've changed already is, yes, we had a virtual team, but they were only 2 or 3 people. They would no way cope with the volume of virtual that we've been managing. So a lot of our event producers, project managers, event assistants have now got a greater understanding around the technology and what it can do, which is great, because that skill now will stay with them as we start to get into that more hybrid model, and where we're starting to use technology. Another piece of research we did with our clients said 74% of our clients say that technology will play a major part in their live events.
Wow.
So for our event people to have that now, that new skill, I think is brilliant, and they can advise the client on how best to use that technology within their live event. So I think there is that. I think more of an awareness around sustainability. And we've certainly been training a lot of our people to ask the right questions around sustainability. You know, does the venue have a policy, a sustainability policy? What does it do with waste? What does it do with power? And do you source locally food? So we're making our teams much more aware. And actually, it's an easy door to open, because a lot of the teams, that's what they want. They want to be able to challenge clients, challenge suppliers, and venues on the sustainability journey. So we're certainly doing a lot more training around that, of what do we do, what new systems do we need to put in place. And of course, then the final thing is the ROI. Being much more aware about the effectiveness of live events and what we're trying to get out of it. What behavioural changes are we trying to create with the delegates?
Absolutely, and that's a very, very good point to finish up on. So thank you so much for joining me today on Global Meetings Industry Day to talk about this. I think we've covered some fantastic points in the last 20 or so minutes, and I think, there's definitely a lot of positivity looking towards the future. I think, we've got that light at the end of the tunnel now, to use an overused phrase at the moment.
No, absolutely. I think we'll hopefully go into the golden age of live events again, starting back end of this year.
Yes, fingers crossed for all of that. And yes, I think that's a really great goal to have, and obviously we'll see how things go. But
absolutely.
Like I said, thank you so much for joining me, Dale. It's been great to talk to you today. And we will hopefully see each other at some point at a live event in the future.
Absolutely, a glass of wine somewhere in some bar in a live event.
Sounds fantastic. All right. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.